Soldiers Speak. On 22nd October 1947, Pakistani Kabalis raided Kashmir as a part of Pakistan's plan to seize the beautiful state by force. On 27th October, Indian troops landed at Srinagar just in the nick of time and saved the state, pushing back the raiders. I welcome you all to hear about the race to save Kashmir at today's agenda, Saving Kashmir, the War of 1947-1948. To discuss on this, we have our esteemed guest, Colonel Ajay Singh. Colonel Ajay Singh sir has served in Indian Army for 28 years till 2011 when he took his retirement. Since then, he has written over 200 published articles and has authored 4 books. Ladies and gentlemen, I present Colonel Ajay Singh, a military historian who writes for films and televisions and appears frequently on television. Welcome, sir. I'm so glad you could join us for today's talk.
Thank you, Vivek. Thank you for such a generous introduction and thank you for the invite. It is always a pleasure coming on to your show.
Sir, we always love to hear about the different topics, the way Indian history has been, what we are today has been shaped by all the battles that we have fought. But this one is considered as the blackest day of India. So, Kashmir has been the root cause of dispute between India and Pakistan since the independence or so-called partition. What were the origin of the dispute and the position of the main parties, that is India, Pakistan, and Kashmir at the time of independence?
Okay. Thanks, Vivek. Now we are going back to where it all began, and I will try to bring out the historical insights into the problem. One, as you know, when India got independence and we were partitioned into India and Pakistan, as per the agreement, all the 526 princely states of the time had to join either India or Pakistan. Now, there was no problem with all of them except for 3 states: Junagadh, Hyderabad, and Kashmir. Junagadh was taken over by police action by India. Hyderabad acceded again by police action later on in 1948. The problem came with Kashmir. It was contiguous to both India and Pakistan. Pakistan considered part of theirs, we considered part of ours. And it was ruled by Maharaja Hari Singh, a Dogra Hindu ruler. But the majority of the population there were Muslims. Now both sides were sure that they would join either India, Kashmir would join India or Pakistan. But Maharaja Hari Singh was actually contemplating the idea of remaining independent. It was the largest state, an independent army of its own. Though it was a landlocked state, he thought it becomes something like Switzerland. So he vacillated. He did not join either of them. And Kashmir had prime emotive importance for both India and Pakistan. Jinnah had his eyes on it. In fact, they say the story was in around September. They were sure Kashmir would join them. Jinnah wanted, because had got tuberculosis and he was recovering from tuberculosis. Doctor told him to go to a good place. He wanted to go to Kashmir, and then he was told, no, you can't go there because it's not joined us as yet. Which is what set the whole the whole ball rolling. Nehru himself was from Kashmir, so obviously emotive attachment was there. And both sides had the idea. And while Maharaja Hari Singh was not making up his mind, the talk in the court was he was vacillating towards moving towards India. Pakistan decided, should he go to India, it would be disastrous for them, and they decided to launch an armed invasion of Kashmir. Now, they could not attack using the army. So what they did was they got together the tribes, Waziristan, the northwestern frontier border, and said, you're going for a jihad. That name of that operation was, they were 22nd of October with the aim to come right into Srinagar, capture the Maharaja Hari Singh himself by physical force, and take over the state. And you will see as events unfold, they came very close to achieving their plans.
So, so like again, Kashmir was love for both the countries. That is one thing. But just partition had happened. Both the countries were struggling to set themselves. So when Pakistan sent armed raiders into Kashmir to capture it by force, what were
Right?
their aims and plans?
Okay, very good. You see, now this operation with the Pakistanis launched was the brainchild of a Major General Akbar Khan. He's written a very good book called Raiders from Kashmir, right? And his plan was we can't send the army, it'll be open war. So we send these raiders, the Pathan tribesmen, into Kashmir. He said we will send them along all the fronts towards Srinagar, in the south towards Jammu, in the north towards Ladakh. And remember, there were no forces at that time. It was only the Kashmir state forces, which had got just 9,000 men, which is no force at all, if you take a look at it. Right? They said they will come all the way to Srinagar, capture the state, and de facto declare it as part of Pakistan. They also had instigated an uprising in some places like Punj, and they were very sure the local population would support them. So they launched this Operation Gulmarg, which, like I told you before, came within just kilometers of success.
Okay. So when Maharaja Hari Singh finally agreed to accede to India, how did we send our troops to Srinagar?
Okay, okay. You know, like in a way, the Pakistanis were too clever for their own good. When they sent the Kabalis, I won't call them raiders, also, they're Kabali, they were nothing more than armed mercenaries who had been paid heavily by the Pakistani government, who had come purely to loot, nothing more than that. When they came in, their first target was Muzaffarabad, the then capital of Kashmir, right? And they broke out from Abbottabad, the same place in Abbottabad now where Osama bin Laden was hiding, right? They crossed the Pakistani Kashmir border and they first hit Muzaffarabad. Here, the town was not defended at all. They were just about not even about 500 Kashmir state troopers out there. They took over the force, they cut the electricity line, and that is when their colors began. They looted the town, they began pillaging the population, and they unleashed mayhem out there. Now, this continued as they moved on towards Baramulla and beyond. And the refugees started coming back, telling them tales of the atrocities which were being committed upon them. That is when Maharaja Hari Singh asked for help. And we said, Sardar Patel said, we cannot send our own troops to help you because you're not part of India. As soon as you accede to the Indian Union, we can send our troops. On the 26th of October, Maharaja Hari Singh agreed to join India and sign the instrument of accession. Now, there's a story to that. It was such a tight race. I mean, the Indian troops would have come the next day. The Pakistanis raiders were just 20 kilometers away. He said, in case you do not hear Indian aircraft landing, he told his ADC, if you don't hear Indian aircraft landing in the morning, shoot me in my sleep. It was a desperate situation. But luckily, next morning on the 27th of October, the first Indian troops landed at Srinagar and Kashmir was saved after that.
Okay, so it was a very so how close was the race to Srinagar? Like since we were attacked from all three sides,
Yes. Okay, that
What was the
now
chance that we could have lost the Srinagar and it was saved literally
I
by
would say
the.
you are saying it was a chance we could have lost. I would say it was a minor miracle that it was saved. It was so close. And by a strange, I mean, it's a terrible thing to have happened. But what saved Srinagar were the atrocities committed by these Kabalis. They crossed Muzaffarabad, they were coming along the main road towards Srinagar, and they stopped, they were delayed. When this happened, the commander in chief of the Kashmir State Forces, Brigadier Rajinder Singh, he charged to meet the raiders with whatever he had, barbers, cooks, knives, everybody. And he blocked them by blowing up a bridge. That delayed them for 24 hours. Then they came to Baramulla. In Baramulla, the kind of atrocities they committed was unimaginable. The raiders actually started going back to their villages with their trucks full of loot and women and whatever they could lay their hands on. They halted there for 24 hours, just looting. And in fact, even now, they have the nunnery out there, which they had looted completely. They raped the nuns. It was a carnage which they did out there. And those hours gave the Indian troops to land in Srinagar on the 27th in the morning. And even then, it was very, very, very close. The tribesmen were all around the hills around Srinagar. All that was required was them. They were coming close to the airport also. All they had to do was place one truck on Srinagar airfield, and that would have been the end of the story. No further troops would have been able to land. There were almost 7 to 10,000 tribesmen in the thrust on Srinagar itself. And the first to land were two companies of one Sikh, along with a battalion of 13 parafield regiment. I mean, they were all the troops who could be gathered together in Delhi at short notice were put into the Dakotas and sent out here. When they landed, I mean, slowly, of course, the build-up started taking place. The first thing they did was go and launch a flag march to make the population feel slightly secure. And then they rushed towards Baramulla, where they were coming. They fought a delaying battle out there in the area of Baramulla, in which the commanding officer himself died. But it gave them time. Remember, each hour meant 2 or 3 more aircraft coming in. It was a race against time. And gradually, over a period of 3 or 4 days, an entire brigade built up. Even then, there were not more than around 1,500 men out there, 1,500 to 2,000 men, with about 7 to 10,000 tribesmen in the hills, all spread out. But we achieved one very big victory at Shalteng, in the outskirts of Srinagar, in which, along with our infantry, armored cars were used, and around 4 to 500 of the raiders were caught in the open and virtually massacred, including by use of air. That Battle of Shalteng, which was fought just 20 kilometers northeast of Srinagar, tilted the scales. From now
Okay.
on, in the Srinagar sector at least, we had got the upper hand. We had inflicted such casualties they could never recover. They started moving back, and we were on the offensive in the Srinagar sector. And you must read a book by a Pakistani general called Akbar Khan, who was the brainchild. He called it Raiders into Kashmir very proudly. He himself mentions with almost pride that in Baramulla, a town of 14,000, 11,000 were massacred. This is the kind of atrocities they had done. And that kind of delay, this is what enabled us to gain the time for our troops to land out there. And we raced Srinagar. I would say the race was won by less than a day. 12 hours more, and we would have lost it.
Okay, sir. So, like, I was going through one of your videos where it was said that when first aircraft with the troops landed, even they were uncertain if it is our own territory or enemies have captured it.
Yes,
So,
yes, that is how close it was. When the first aircraft landed, they didn't know whether the raiders had reached the airfield or not. And can you imagine, had they been in the airfield and an aircraft landed, they would have been massacred. They were told they've got no communication, no trans, nothing. And finally, they received one message from the ATC of Srinagar. Yes, you can land. Which told them, yes, the airfield is still in friendly hands. That is when the first aircraft touched down. And that moment in the morning of 8 o'clock in the morning on 27th of October, when the first aircraft landed, was the moment when saving Kashmir began.
so yes, that was the turning point of the war when things
Yes.
started in Africa. So, though we discussed a lot about, Srinagar, it was saved, of course. What are the other fronts in Jammu and the northern areas, and what
Yeah.
were the actions there?
Yeah. You know, we talk a lot about how Srinagar was saved. That was a major prize. And like I said, that battle was fought from 22nd October till around mid-November when we defeat them at Shaltek. Very close, but we defeated them and perhaps pushing them back. But remember, the thrust had not come just to Srinagar only. The Srinagar was the main thrust. In the south, I think you could put a slide now. The thrust was going in towards the Jammu. Yes, see, can you see the slide here? Marked in green. It was going in the south towards Jammu. In the north, in the area of Ladakh, what they call the Gilgit Baltistan region of the northern area, remember, we had no forces there. Zero. They were only but two companies of the Kashmir state forces in the northern areas who were swamped, and they were allowed to enter virtually towards Ladakh. In the south, in the Kashmir sector, I beg your pardon, in the Jammu sector, they actually made a lot of progress on a wide front. Areas, they made a big success when they besieged the town of Punj. And Punj was held under captivity by Indian battalions supplied by air for 1 year till it was finally relieved. They had 10,000 tribesmen out there. So the area which they have captured in the south, along in the Jammu sector, in Srinagar, and further up north in the northern areas of Baltistan and Gilgit, is the area where the line of control has come about, and which even today we call the LOC. See, you can see in this timeline which you have put out here. 22nd October, the raiders began the attacks in Muzaffarabad. 24th, the Indian government got to know of it. And how? Through refugees coming. Baramulla, they came on 26th, and that 1 day of looting is what delayed them. That was the day we had got Maharaja Hari Singh agreeing to join us, and the next the Indian army landed there. The battle then went on for 1 year more. It was only the beginning. Srinagar was only the beginning. For 1 year, it went on till the 31st of December 1948, when we finally, the UN sponsored ceasefire came about, and the line of control came in the areas which they had occupied.
Right, sir. So battle went for 1 year. After that, United Nations intervened. So when the ceasefire came about in December 1948, did we achieve our aims? This is what we wanted, or do you think the ceasefire was the right thing to do that we did, or was there a mistake that was done by our bureaucrats by going to the United Nations?
Our bureaucrats and the political leadership. Yes, everyone very fond of blaming them. Okay, now, I want you to. It is today. It's very common to blame Nehruji and the previous regime for everything that has gone wrong, and even keep on thinking, yeah, the Indian army was on the offensive. We could have captured. We could have got it back and all that. We must view things in the right perspective. India had got independence. It was a bloody independence. 6 million refugees created. So much bloodshed was there, right? Kashmir war had broken out exactly 2 months after the independence. The war was going on for a year. We were pushing back. Remember, we are talking mountains. We were pushing back the raiders, but literally each objective was taking months to capture. It is not like it is being captured overnight. Each we were taking months to capture. We were our critical areas. Punch, the town of Punch, which was besieged by the raiders, we managed to recover. We broke that siege. We captured Zozila Pass in such an audacious operation using tanks in the highest point where tanks have ever been used before. Had we not captured Zozila Pass, Leh, Ladakh, everything would have gone. That's the only route to it. Now, our major aims we had got. The other objectives, say Muzaffarabad, which we were to have captured. Again, we must view it in perspective. Yeah, we were pushing them back. But to capture it would have been again a long sustained campaign because by now the entire Pakistani army was involved in the defense. It wouldn't have been a cakewalk. Now, when the plan, the progress was being put up, one of the things which people are not aware of is the manner in which it was projected to Pandit Nehru. The army said, look, it'll be going to be a hard slogging match, but if we open a front in the Punjab sector, if we attack them in Punjab, they will be forced to withdraw their troops and will be able to make it easier. And he, in his wisdom, he said, we are a new nation. It will be an all-out war. We don't want an all-out war. So he said, rather than have a slogging match going on interminably, he approached the United Nations for a ceasefire. Perhaps it could have been done bilaterally between India and Pakistan. Perhaps we could have not gone to the United Nations at all. But one thing we must remember is it had been a slogging match between two new nations who are yet to find their moorings. So one cannot be very critical of the decision of going to the UN.
Right, sir. So it was to avoid. We had gained independence.
Wait, I'm going to add on to this one point again, which a lot of people have that confused. The UN mandated ceasefire came about on 31st of December 1948. What did it say? There's a lot of talk. They said that we have to withdraw to original position. That means Pakistan raiders had to go back across the line of Pakistan and Kashmir before any of the conditions of the ceasefire could be implemented. We must remember Pakistan has not kept their part of the bargain. They talk so much about the so-called plebiscite in Kashmir that yes, the UN mandate, the UN condition did say there will be a plebiscite once they have moved back. So their condition are adhered to. The ceasefire did come about, but it was not the solution to the problem. Rather, it let the problem fester for 70 years thereafter.
Exactly, I was coming to that. We all know that Kashmir has been through turmoil even after 17 years of independence. So there have been three wars between India and Pakistan over it, and an insurgency has been ongoing for like last 20 years. What led to this?
Okay. So let's go. I will take it stage by stage. Right. Pakistan never relinquished its claims on Kashmir. Never. It had become inside it became an emotive issue for them more than anything else. Now, after 47, 48, which were actually our longest war, which we had fought, we remember we suffered that major defeat in the India-China War of 1962. And that was the time Pakistan had got a lot of new equipment and arms. They were sure that now we can take on the defeated Indian army and capture Kashmir by force. And they launched the war of 1965, which we covered in the previous discussion of the 1965 war, which again involved sending armed raiders into Kashmir, followed it up with an armored attack inside Kashmir. As we know, even that failed. The raiders were captured by the local population themselves and given to the Indians. The armored thrusts were blocked and they lost a lot of territory. What followed was the 71 war, in which we actually paid them back in their own coin by dividing the country into two parts. In spite of that, they had not changed. In 87, 89, they got an opportunity. And if you take a look at how this phase of insurgency came about, it was with the rigged elections of 1989. Remember, Kashmir has got a democratically elected government. It is the will of the people that is going on. What changed it was the rigged election of 87, 89, in which a lot of unrest took place. And the Pakistanis, who had just uh, helped the Mujahideen get victory in Afghanistan, thought we can now use this situation to pump in the same Mujahideens, as they call them, the same raiders, the Kabalis, as I call them, back into Kashmir to start an insurgency. And that started the next phase of the insurgency in Kashmir. When that was controlled, Pervez Musharraf initiated the Kargil war without telling his prime minister, simply to draw attention back into the Kashmir issue once again. So they have never really given up. And once they were defeated there as well, they were pushed back on the back feet. It didn't stop them. The Pakistani sponsored insurgency continued for a long time. And this has continued even
I'm sir, I'm not able to hear. I think we have lost the connections with Colonel Ajay Singh, sir. Viewers, please
Can
stay
you get
tuned.
me?
We'll be back shortly.
Can you get me?
Yes, now.
Yes.
Please
Okay.
continue.
Right. Okay, so can I have the question again, please, Vivek?
So, what led to all the insurgencies that have been going on
Yeah.
since last 20 years? So, and like still, it is something. The dispute is not over. So, we are like three wars and insurgencies going. What is leading to that, and when do we see a solution? Actually,
Yeah. Well, actually, we covered the three wars. We covered the insurgency. You can call it insurgency. Actually, Pakistani, it is not an insurgency. It is Pakistani sponsored terrorism.
there is
The groups who are coming from across the line of control. They are groups like the Lashkar-e-Toiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, so many others, which are Pakistani Punjabi groups. They are not local Kashmiri groups. So, this is not an insurgency. It is a terrorism. It's a terrorist problem sponsored by our Pakistani neighbors. And unfortunately, it is what you call a low cost option which they are following, in which, by just continuing with the acts of terrorism, they keep the pot boiling at little cost to themselves, but which takes a lot of time and resources by us just to keep it under control.
Right, sir. And in the recent development, we know that Article 370 has been
Yes.
instituted in Jammu and Kashmir. So, with the
Ah,
abrogation of Article 370, has the situation changed in Kashmir? And is it a right step that was taken by the India government?
I was waiting for you to ask about Article 370. I knew that would be coming, right? Okay. Now, we all know Article 370 was the grant of special status to Kashmir on a temporary basis. It was a temporary measure which had to be abrogated at some time, right? Now, this special status to Kashmir implied that people from out of the state could not purchase properties. Even the refugees who were there in Kashmir since 1947-48 were not entitled to have their land in their name. So, the abrogation of that article and the bifurcation of Jammu and Kashmir into the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh has actually been a good step in the right direction, which amalgamates Kashmir completely into India, the way it was meant to be. But what I feel is, while this was a step in the right direction, its implementation could have been better handled. For example, we all knew it was the cards. It could have been diluted slowly and slowly over a period of time. The other way was, when it was done, the local politicians should have been brought on board. Plus, that internet blackdown, clampdown, which followed thereafter, almost for a year, there was no internet in Kashmir for the normal people. This kind of harsh measures, in a way, will make it difficult for the government to present its perspective to the common people. So my feeling is yes, Article 370 should have been abrogated. It was a very good step, but its implementation should have been done more humanely and in a manner in which the Kashmiri politicians and the common persons were aware of the benefits of it and how it would be helpful to them. Not with the kind of heavy handedness that was utilized later on.
Right, sir. And we have seen that post the abrogation of Article 370, the situations have indeed changed. Recent developments, the celebration of Independence Day, other festivals, recent tie-up with other government for investments, they are going on. So, of course, that will make Kashmir, JNK, and Ladakh, both the Union territories, of course, a beautiful place. And of course, it had some constraints in the at the initial phase, at the time of implementation. So, yes, but people have suffered a lot, and we only pray and wish that now they actually get that feel of heaven that actually what Jammu and Kashmir is. So, being said that, what is the situation right now? And do you think it will improve or worsen?
Okay.
And what do
Okay.
you think can be the long term solution of this still persisting problem?
Okay. Now, like remember we talked about abrogation 370 and how the situation has changed. You take a look at, I was in Kashmir just a month and a half ago, having drinking chai and kava at the bank of Dal Lake at 8:39 at night. The hotels were full, tourism was booming. And when you speak to the people, the grouses they have are the standard grouse which you and me have. Na? Electricity nahi aa rahi hai, there are not enough jobs. I mean, the tourism sector should have been given a better boost. The same grouse which you and me have. Never did I get this feel, and I've been in Kashmir earlier as well, when the tension was so palpable. Never did I get the feeling of the kind of tension which was there. Unfortunately, we have now seen a revival in terrorism after the Taliban have come into Afghanistan. which obviously means the Pakistanis have stepped up the offensive. You've seen the recent encounter in Punj, in which we lost 5 soldiers, which was a very heavy loss of life. You've seen them targeting the migrant laborers. Such a sad thing. They've changed their tactics right now. And the way I look at it is Pakistan, if they do intent, not if they do, they will intensify their infiltration of terrorists into Kashmir. They will make it go back onto the boil once again. And plus, there has been one more element added to it with China. We remember China is also a stakeholder. Firstly, they have got about 1700 square kilometers of land which were illegally ceded to them by Pakistan way back in 1950s. They are holding on to Oxide Chain, which is Indian territory, which they had occupied way back in this after in the wake of the 62 war. Though of course much before that as well. And now that remember they have got in investments passing through Pakistan occupied Kashmir. And this link, the China Pakistan economic corridor, which goes to Gilgit Baltistan, is a way an economic lifeline for them. So they will want to take action to preserve their interests in past occupied Kashmir. So they will obviously raise the ante in helping Pakistan in their position. Their hardening stance in Ladakh is also indicative of the fact that they are willing to play a slightly more active and I would say slightly more aggressive role in Kashmir, which is not really a very good indicator for us. So, a long term, the way it is at the moment, yes, the situation is intensifying, but it can be controlled. Remember, when you talk about the Taliban, what they did to the US Army, they did it in Afghanistan against a different army. The Indian Army is battle hardened for decades. And we can handle that insult. It will be a problem, but yes, it can be contained and handled. We have to be ready for the long haul. And simultaneously, our diplomatic processes have to go on to ensure that the world is made aware of our perception of the problem and how it is entirely generated by Pakistan sponsored terrorism. In the long run, to make genuine peace and harmony come back into Kashmir, the Kashmiri people have to be amalgamated completely. So the it is basically development, jobs. Once that increases, I'll give you a small example. I was speaking to, like I told you, I was speaking to people from all walks of life. They were saying कि साहब जब कोई काम नहीं होता है, अगर कोई मुझे 500 रुपए दे दो पत्थर फेंकने के लिए, मैं जाऊंगा वहां. This was what was happening. So, as long as you get back the same economic benefits, that same process of development where everybody is gainfully occupied, that is when things will come completely under control. But I would say we should be prepared for 2 years, if not more, of a little bit of turbulence in the aftermath of Afghanistan, which we can contain, but we should keep the powder dry. Be prepared for the worst, expect the worst, and be ready accordingly in the knowledge that we can control the situation and keep it well in hand.
Definitely, sir. And Kashmir is a part of India. First, we hope for the best, and yeah, we will be prepared for the worst. And dear viewers, you can, two topics. One was Indo-Pacific that we discussed in the last topic, where you understand in detail the position of China and how India has its institutions set by the formation of Quad. Then we discussed about AUKUS also. So we can refer to our previous videos of Indo-Pacific and the development of Taliban and its impact on India. That is the video before that, to understand in detail how India is positioned in between and how these developments can impact and affect India. Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable time. And before we wind up, please, can you just giving me a complete conclusion about how it started in 1947 and when we
Okay.
where we are now.
Okay, okay. So, well, I will give you a breakup. Like, I'm a historian, so I like to, of course, go back into the thread of history. So, like I said, it began with the Maharaja Hari Singh wanting to remain independent and not agreeing to join either India or Pakistan. And to force his hand, Pakistan sent the Kabalis into Kashmir, which were pushed back by the Indian army literally in the nick of time. And when they were pushed back, is when that 1.5 year war between India and Pakistan or Kashmir resulted in the formation of the line of control, something which remained active for decades. Pakistan never gave up its claims. It fought the 65 war, the 71 war, of course, which was completely in our favor, 99 Kargil war, and they had an insurgency which went on for 20 years, sponsored purely by
Still going
Pakistan,
on.
still going on.
Going.
At the moment, with the abrogation of Article 370 and the changes which have taken place, yes, a lot of difference has been brought about. A lot of gains, a lot of the terrorist groups have also been eliminated. You find that very few local terrorists now, most of them have come from the other side. But with China also entering the fray, Pakistan being emboldened by its so called victory in Afghanistan, I do foresee perhaps an intensification of the problem in Kashmir, but something which we can manage, and I'm sure we'll be able to keep well within us way.
Definitely, sir. Dear viewers, this was Colonel Ajay Singh, sir, the military historian, giving us insight about saving Kashmir, how it started in 1947 to where we are right now. Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable time and all the inputs. We end today's talk here itself. We'll see you next time with another topic, of course, that has impacted on India. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Vivek. It's a pleasure being with you. Thank you.